left, there should be a little arrow by the mute button that says leave audio. Looks like you have. We are recording and live streaming when you are ready.
I'm ready, so. I'd like to call the special meeting of the Isabella County Board of Commissioners to order. Stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Hutchinson.
Here.
Commissioner Avery.
Here.
Commissioner Jelazinski.
Here.
Commissioner Engler.
Here.
Commissioner Marino.
Here.
Commissioner Cheney.
Here.
Commissioner Holt.
Here.
All present, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next up is approval of the agenda. We'll start out with the public comments and then the reason for the special meeting, discuss performance contracting project with Johnson Controls Incorporated. And then general public comments again, announcements and adjournment. So is there a motion to approve the agenda? So moved. Support. Moved and supported. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
You have an agenda, and next up is general public comments. And did we have any general public either here or online? That's Mr. Shoemaker.
There is no one online at this time, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. We'll move right along, get right into the meat of it, discuss performance contracting project with Johnson Controls Incorporated.
Be able to share.
I should be able to share my screen. Am I being heard okay in the room and through the recording, or I don't know how loud I have to talk? I don't feel like I'm shouting.
You're bouncing on the recording, you're good.
You do tend to fade off and
Okay.
talk. So please, for us older folks, thank you.
All right, yeah, I always think there's a microphone right here, so I talk like I'm talking on the phone, but I can remember there's people in the room. First, thank you everybody for coming to this meeting and giving up your evening to discuss this project. I'm very inspired to see everybody's commitment to the county and interest in the program. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We have a presentation that I think several of you have already seen that goes through the scope of the project. A contract draft has been provided to you. The presentation is a very high level summary, just a one page of each potential improvement measure that might be in the project. And
They also have a copy of the presentation with them right in front of them.
yes, so if it's okay with you, we would, our plan was to present the high level summary, just a slide per potential scope item, and then kind of a summary of the project, and then just lay out the contract and where you can kind of find everything and just answer any questions. You could stop us anytime and ask questions.
Sounds good.
I am here as your representative for Johnson Controls. I brought some people here with me. Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself? Still down the line.
Hi, my name is Sarah Harris. I'm with Johnson Controls. I'm the operations manager.
Greg Pensamiglia, Johnson Controls, I'm the development engineer.
Derek Gotzi and Johnson Controls Mechanical Project Team Lead.
And John Green, representative here for Johnson Controls and our energy services division. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. As you are sharing a screen, is that correct? Yes. Okay. So I was going to start with what was the final slide real quick, just to kind of give a summary of how we got to here. The initial conversations were around what could be done for the county to reduce operating costs and address some much needed infrastructure improvements, failing equipment. So that was a primary goal in developing a potential project, is replacing equipment that was failing already. As I think many are aware, issues with maintaining temperature and comfort levels, particularly at the trial court, and some old aging equipment here. So that's where we're at in the process right now. After. Right. Go into the detail about that.
Like this is. There's a little thing.
Looks like the audio as well.
Leave computer audio.
Little arrow down by the mute. Oh, thanks.
Echo. I think we're good. So that's where we're at right now is, we have a preliminary solution or a package of solutions. And that's what we want to talk about and see, okay, it's just meet what your intent was, when we just discussed the potential program 2 months ago or so. So we'll go back to this one here. So we'll hit on the list of improvement measures. We'll hit on the measurement and verification. One of the important aspects of this process is that we will guarantee energy savings that'll be shown to you. And part of that process is measuring and verifying and improving those energy savings. And then the savings and cost summaries, and then kind of talk about maybe do a quick review of the contract and talk about next steps, get your feedback, answer any questions. List of improvement measures. I'm going to turn it over to Victor, who's one of several development engineers on the project. I think you've seen presented John Crawford previously, celebrating his anniversary this week somewhere. Did he tell you guys where?
They're Mackinac Island.
Mackinac Island. Mackinac Island.
20 years.
So I'll turn it over to Vic and he'll go through the scope here. This might get a little more detailed than more or less than you wanted. I don't know. If you
Come down there.
Yeah, probably be easier for just to take over since I'm there.
So, so here, on mechanical, we went through and, I know we talked to some of you guys, but some we haven't. So we went through with Steve and Larry and, we've walked through all these buildings in detail. And we kind of looked at what's included in this project is your most dire needs. So that's kind of what we go through first here. So, mechanical, so at the admin building, chiller replacement. Currently the chillers are both original to the building. They've had a lot of work done over the years and they're, past useful life. So we're looking at replacing those chillers, which is kind of involved because it's not, right now the chillers are up in the penthouse above us. And then there's condensers out on the roof. We're looking to eliminate the condensers and the chillers inside the building, demo those out, demo the pumps out, and install 2 packaged chillers with pump packages out on the roof. All the structural steel up on the roof that goes with that, and piping back into the penthouse where the piping is now. So pretty entailed, but it's definitely a needed measure to get some years of life out of this building yet. So move on. Okay. Air handler refurbishment. So still at this building, there's 5 air handlers up in the penthouse. They're all original, early 70s vintage. What we propose doing is going through each air handler kind of with a fine-tooth comb and rebuilding it. Getting it up to today's standards basically of airflow by replacing the coils, replacing the motors, cleaning the unit, painting the unit, looking at all the drain pans, that control valves, everything associated with that could fail, basically just leaving the box and rebuilding everything inside. So that we're looking at doing that on the 5 units. 3 of the 5 are serving EAV boxes, so those will get variable speed drives to regulate the airflow to the boxes within the building. 2 of them are constant volume, so those are not.
On those air handlers, is there any asbestos issues?
I know that we talked about, there's some suspect possible asbestos on the pipe installation. I know we've talked about having that tested before we commence work, just to ensure that we're in compliance with that.
So if we find someone, it has to be mediated, that's not in the proposal.
Correct, that's something that we, as a company, exclude, and it would be the county's responsibility to have that removed.
You want to talk about your efforts in that regard?
My turnaround is top contractor, the one that you sent me up with Vic. He noticed that there could be as many as 250 some samples. What we decided that we would wait until we see what kind of scope we decide to go with on this project. Then he would come out and test those areas. So if we're not gonna do everything up there was no sense in doing it all. And then Nicole and I had spoke that maybe we would turn around and just to verify that the building is completely asbestos free, do the whole thing. So I'm kind of waiting to see where we're at. And we're talking quite a bit more money than we anticipated, but not a lot of money to make sure that the building is asbestos.
And if we can assist with that, I know they're come out, once we spray paint areas that we're gonna be working on, so you guys know it's. That can help.
And it should be noted that a couple of things that were suspect over the years had been tested and shown not to be. So it's still possible that you have asbestos, but you can't until you test.
The contractor had told me that they did a school one time and they took 60 some samples. And it wasn't until the 33rd sample that they found the hot. So just because there's a lot that aren't, it comes down to years ago what they may attack those joints with. It could vary.
And that was part of the conversation is, do we want to do potential asbestos testing or remediation just as it pertains to, the HVAC in this potential scope? Or, just as a benefit to the county so that moving forward, anytime you have any work done, you have this report that shows everything's asbestos free, and that's a requirement of OSHA anytime any work's being done in the area. So things. We'll work with you there, however you want.
Okay, VAP box replacement, I touched on that briefly. We were 103 VAP boxes scattered throughout the building. They are all original to the building as well. And they are also pneumatic, so all the control, most of the controls in this building are pneumatic. The boxes included in that. Basically, there's air lines running into those boxes that control the damper within. So the scope involves removing and replacing those boxes with new boxes with digital controls, which will all integrate to the controls of the later on the presentation. But it's all integrated here together in one package. So the boxes definitely pass their life as well.
Can you help me understand that when you were talking about the air handlers before, you said some were constant volume and weren't getting VAV boxes?
Yeah.
So can you just?
Yeah, I believe there's
expand on that a
one.
little bit, help me understand.
So there's 5 air handlers up there, 3 are bigger that are currently from the original design are piped to VAV boxes serving all 3 floors. I think it's kind of segmented by the building. And there's 2 smaller ones. I think one does this room that we're in now. It just serves this room only. So there's no boxes needed. It's only serving one space.
Okay.
So it's a dedicated air handler that goes to one large room. And I think there's one other one that serves maybe the room below on the 2nd floor.
Large meeting room.
Yeah, it's the large meeting rooms that have their own dedicated air handler that just serve that one space. The VAV air handlers serve multiple spaces.
So then this room will still have those controls.
No, these rooms will get all new. The whole building's getting completely
They just won't get
boxes. Yeah.
variable.
Speed drives on the units that are only for the units that have the boxes. Because there's nothing to vary if it's just serving one space.
Gotcha.
It's all just direct up to the district.
So what will that box look like? Like ox sensor for?
Yep, there'll be on the thermostat, they'll have a motion sensor that'll be tied in. So when someone comes in space, we could do an occupied setback in that case where they can just turn it down a couple of degrees during the day. So there's an area that's not being used, but it's not turned down enough where it'll feel cold or warm to see when it just to tune it a little bit to save the energy.
We won't notice a difference between this room and the other rooms
No,
because of that.
no. If this building was designed today, this would still be the way it is.
Okay, thank you. That helps me understand.
And of course, we'll do a full air balance on all the VAV systems. Boiler replacement over at the trial court, 3 boilers over there are original to that building, which is about 23 years old. One of which is kind of condemned and was used for parts. So there's 2 boilers there. Both are, at the end of their life. And could benefit from a higher efficiency as well. So the scope involves replacing those 3 boilers with new high efficient boilers, and all the associated engineering and venting and all that stuff. One thing we're looking at on those is condensate neutralizers, because those are condensing, and condensate could be acidic, so there is a neutralizer on the condensate to make sure we're not rotting out drains and stuff. Back at the trial court too is there's 2 rooftops, original, 23 years old. I know we've had some issues with the compressors. In one of those, it's not running for cooling right now. So this involves replacing both those units with the latest and greatest, essentially, which that building already is VAV over there. So these new units will integrate to that system. Talk controls later, but that's getting all new controls.
Talk about the R22.
Yeah, currently those units are R22 refrigerant, which was phased out around 2010, and it's kind of slowly fallen off more since then. So it's very expensive to buy now, or almost impossible to buy. So they'll have a new refrigerant in them, which will be more accessible, easy to work with.
You said all new controls. Help me understand what you mean by controls.
So that building's a bit different than this one, where this one's 1970s airline, essentially. That one was 2000, which was digital controls. So the wiring, like this building will be getting all new wiring throughout the whole hallways.
Because it never existed.
Right, down to every thermostat, to the box, to the units, to the boilers, everything. That building already has all the wiring in place. So essentially, we're just replacing the devices.
What we see on
The thermostat, or there's like a kind of like a computer almost in the mechanical rooms that are tied to the boilers and rooftops. Those we get in place.
So me not being the engineer, I gotta get these guys to explain it more simply to me, and I have to remind them sometimes, when they use a lot of acronyms. When they say pneumatic, it's air. So in the little thermostat, there's air lines running the little device that opens and closes dampers, based on the pressure that it sends to the device.
because that was cutting edge in 1972.
That's how you did it.
Yeah.
If they didn't have the power that new electric actuators, little device that moves, have now. So you have a big air compressor filling everything up with air, whether it's moving anything or not. So when there's leaks, you're spending that energy in the air compressor, and then you have airlines running all over, and you don't know the position of those things because it's just shooting air at them. It doesn't know whether it actually went to the position it's supposed to or not. So with digital controls and wiring, a new control system, have a pane of glass, a screen, you can see where each of the position of all the dampers and speeds and everything's supposed to be, with confirmation that it's actually there. So it helps troubleshoot if say something did get caught and something's not moving the way it's supposed to. Instead of, hey, it's hot here, let's go check out 103 boxes and see which one's not where it needs to be.
But this installation here, we have the rigging, so there's cranes, and we'll have a large crane, which has to be moved twice to get both units on, since we're kind of reaching the different spots of that building. So we anticipate this to be done on a weekend, back up and running on Monday. So.
Great. Judges tend to be a little bit particular about people stomping around on their roofs while they're holding court, so very sensitive.
So how I preface this by, the items included are the ones that were the most dire. There was a list of things that we looked at early on that are not included, mainly of which are more your residential style equipment, furnaces, hot water tanks, that kind of thing, which, I know there was always a list of what's needed, what's not, but some of this was left off due to, this is something that wasn't as high a priority for us to look at.
What made it not a high priority? Because of the concept of this project, and it needed to produce energy savings, or
Yeah.
because of urgency?
That partially, a lot of these buildings, you don't pay utilities on. the building complex and overnight, those kind of buildings, day treatment. So the energy savings wasn't there. And then just the size of the equipment, some of that, might be better left to you guys to handle.
Rather than rolling it
Rather
into a
than rolling it
20-year
into-
finance.
It's pretty simple replacements like hot water heaters.
Yeah.
You might even be able to handle in-house.
And one of the things we thought about too is, what the impact would be to your operations if it did go down, if the air handling unit went down. With right now, I believe it's a 40-week lead time on that. You didn't have heating and cooling in a building for 40 weeks, that'd be a little bigger issue than not having hot water for a day while Steve sent some Home Depot to get a hot water.
Steve, do you see anything on that list that you and your department couldn't handle? I think.
Okay,
I was just saying, if those things are old and in need of replacements, when Steve comes to you and says, hey, I need to replace these 13 condensers, we agree with him, it needs to be done.
controls, so we'll talk about this, the first slide's about the network. So currently you do have controls in the trial court and the Center on Aging, Commission on Aging. And, and there's some in this building as well, kind of higher level controls, not the, a lot of it's still there, but there are some older devices. So basically this is looking at one common network. So you'll be able to see those sites on one system, adding in animal control, which this doesn't currently have controls now. So those 4 buildings will be seen on one screen. You can click, you go from building to building, which right now it's not that way. You have one system for the Commission on Aging and one for these 2 buildings. So it'll be much more integrated into one common platform for the network. And a server to go along with that to support it. So at the admin building, I know we've kind of talked a lot about this stuff, but we currently have 103 boxes, which are pneumatic, air, thin tube radiation scattered around the building. You have 61 valves, which are all pneumatic, and then you have the 5 air handlers, which are a combination of pneumatic and some older DVC. So this is integrating all that stuff, basically gutting it, running new power, running new communication wiring throughout the building. New thermostats, new valves, all new basically to bring the building up to digital controls. And integrating back into that network server, which will be simply if we can communicate to everything and get alerts and alarms and all that stuff. And things like that. Just continue on the admin building. We have the 2 chillers that will be installed new up on the roof. We have 3 exhaust fans up in the penthouse, and we have the boilers and boiler downstairs. It's kind of, you can read through this, but it's basically a detailed list of what we need to make to put controls on these devices. Over at trial court, as discussed, we do have an old DX9100, which is vintage 2000 over there right now. So I always say, remember your cell phone from 2000, it's kind of what we're still using over there as far as controls. It does still work, which is good, but the new stuff will, bring you years of reliability as well as some additional features that you don't have. And so we're basically integrating the equipment over there, which are the rooftops and the boilers. To tie all that in. Commission on Aging is a little simpler because that has a Vicon system there, which was a bit newer in 2008, 2009 when the building was built. So there we're just basically integrating that. A lot of the devices will remain, all the thermostats and everything, since it all is still relevant. So basically we're integrating that building into the new network. So the engine will integrate to the new network and be able to see it off of one platform. And over at the animal shelter, right now you just have regular residential thermostats serving the equipment here. We got 8 furnaces, combination of furnaces, unit heaters, makeup units, there's 8 of them. those 8 thermostats and putting in a little network controller over there, hardwiring those new thermostats in, so everything will be able to be seen from the main server. I know here was some hot button items about, people wanting certain temperatures or maybe doing things with the system. So now you'll have the visibility to look at that.
No sneaky things going on.
Correct, yes, thanks. John's gonna talk a bit about Open Blue.
So Open Blue is one of the things that was discussed when the project development agreement was presented, that, hey, there could be a dashboard that the community go to that could say, hey, here's energy savings from this project in real time, and electrical generation from the solar panels. So you would have that dashboard for the community, anybody with that lane. One of the things we thought we could do is put a, internet TV in the floor downstairs where you'd see, and kind of promote the program a little bit. But more than that, internally, useful items for you would be it helps manage the assets. So it's what they call a single pane of glass, where you go in there and you can see, okay, here's all my equipment connected to this thing. This is the age of them. You can track anytime anything's been done to those. You could do report generation. You could create work orders. You can track how many hours, Steve and his group are spending working on those items. So it's a program that kind of takes the place of much more expensive programs that exist that are more management systems as a building as a whole that you could use to track. I need to buy more paper, staplers, or what have you. This is more HVAC specific, very purpose built for just for your facilities. And it does have it's a subscription based service, which is reflected for the first 5 years in the cash flow that we look at.
And then we can put other buildings in that asset management software, or is it strictly just the buildings you're working in? I'm thinking of a building not built yet.
Particular building.
A very
So
particular
it would have to
building.
be updated. It is built specific for when it's done, and then implemented. Part of the subscription fee is making tweaks, but it would have to be upgraded. So there's pricing points. It's kind of like a Zoom license for up to 50 people, if that's up to 100. So I have to look at where break points are and how they do it, because it's based on usually buildings plus points monitored in the building, because this gets implemented in giant universities have 100 buildings. So
What about just like not the dashboard piece of it, but just like the asset just the inventory of your building systems, your controls and the age of it, just that inventory piece? Do you know if that can
it
be?
can be added to it. I don't know if it falls within the subscription point that we have. It might be the subscriptions, 5 buildings, and you have 5 buildings, and or it could be the subscription includes 10, and
Is
you
this
could
a
add another.
JCI product?
And-
Okay, so we can talk.
Yes,
But you guys have the experts, we can figure that out.
And that's a good point as far as controls for, when you do bring the new jail online, that is a large enough building, will have a control system, I take it. And as long, and all.
Siemens, I think.
Yeah, it'll be,
Siemens
which is
as
back nets.
The building control system at the new correctional facility, Siemens. Think. Thought that's who we meant.
Any of the big ones, they're all backnet capable now, so that can all be integrated into a dashboard with these 4 buildings, so you'll be able to, it'll be something you still have one pane to look at as far as controls, and you'll be able to put the jail into that.
Would say do accurate controls is where that's coming from, because that kind of controls the entire facility, but I'm not.
Thank you.
It would require an update. I don't want you to think that.
Yeah,
okay,
it's
like,
not-
okay, the system is gonna automatically do that. It would have to be reprogrammed, because they're, the graphics, they take the layout that you have of your new facility. It has to be completely recreated with all equipment access points, so that software is.
There would be some programming involved, but there wouldn't be anything that can replace this side.
Yes,
The investment would stay the same.
Sure.
It's just a matter of somebody coming out and programming.
Thank you. It's got the capability.
That has a hit, but there would be additional cost.
Right. Thank you. That's exactly what I need to know.
Okay, we'll talk a bit about lighting here. So we have just a few buildings we're looking at lighting at. I know Steve's done a great job of doing the lighting at this building and trial court. So the few buildings we looked at are the ones that you guys paid utilities on and it hadn't been done yet, basically. So we had the animal shelter, the building complex, the maintenance shop over there at the parks, and then material recovery. So there's a listing of the occupancy sensors. Those buildings will receive along with the lighting upgrades. That we get.
And you'll see also in the calculated savings as part of the development, we had placed monitors that sense when the lights are on and when people are there. So then it can calculate the savings as when lights are on and people aren't there. So that's where the motion sensors came in. Okay, it makes sense to put this motion sensor here because it's, you know, occupied 4 hours a day, but lights are on 10 hours a day or something like this.
What's a snack machine occupancy sensor?
That's like,
Get more.
no, it basically, they call it a vendomizer. So it sits on top of the vending machine and it shuts like the lights off. When no one's around in the middle of the night, you know, or it'll, sometimes it'll even reduce the temperature a little bit of the beverages. Very simple.
Wow, that's really subtle.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow, thank you.
Okay, and then, so talking a bit about the buildings, we're doing LED lighting retrofits. Are a lot of the same buildings just talked about, but animal shelter, interior and some exterior there. The building complex, just the 9/11 portion of that building, since that's the one that you guys paid the utilities on. For interior and exterior, the maintenance shop, pole barn, just interior there. There's not any exterior. And then material recovery, you know, interior and exterior there. Building envelope, same kind of thing. We surveyed a lot of the buildings. The ones that remained in are the ones utilities savings are associated with. So we have some door sweeps, sealants of doors and windows mainly. So at the admin building here, we have 7 doors. We've got some trial court, as well as some of those windows up on the 2nd floor, which have some water intrusion, gasket issues. So those will be repaired. And then Commission on Aging, the doors there, we did update that with the ones that you're doing already, so that the 12 doesn't include those. Animal shelter, we verified there is 22 doors. So that was correct. A lot of little buildings around there.
A lot of places for animals that escape you.
Yeah. And then material recovery and public defense. Solar. So the first one here is the admin building. We're looking at a 69 kW DC system, which will be mounted up on the roof. Our engineers went through some detailed engineering as far as what the utilities will allow us to do, as well as maximizing the roof space available. So you can see the layout there on the roof. And you know, we did account for those 2 condensers that were replaced with chillers. So a lot of that's done here, and this roof is newer, so the roof warranty will not be voided. So we looked at here at the admin. Over at the trial court, we have a larger system, 172 kW DC. This we will be doing, we haven't got the slide yet, but we'll be doing a roof replacement here as well. It's a 20-year plus roof. So, you know, in the solar, we verified with the roof vendor that it won't void any warranties. With the solar installation, they're putting a little bit thicker mill up there just to be safe. So this was designed again in conjunction with the utility requirements from consumers, as well as the space available, and maybe some walking space up there too to service it.
So just to hit on kind of the interface with consumers, is an application was submitted on your behalf with consumers for an interconnect where they verify everything downstream of this and accept and see if it was listed as a point of contact. So for each one of them, it went through a process of, I don't know, it's probably good 20, 30 emails at least, yeah. Yeah, 5 or 6 per site of, okay, we got your application submitted, payment for the application is submitted. And then they would say, okay, submit your drawings, and then they would have their comments, and we would send comments back, so that's gone back and forth, and everything is vetted and accounted for in the scope of price right now. I think we're still just waiting for their final approval, but everything is just today, and we don't anticipate any issues with, capacity of a transformer. Every now and then, so you gotta make a major upgrade to a transformer. We're able to avoid major changes to the downstream electrical industry.
So Dick, you just said, I think that the roof will be replaced at Troutler. Right. It's just gonna replace with a thicker mill than we would have because of the solar.
You just need another layer of insulation and add it to.
Yeah, so, yeah, we'll get them the slide, it's sliding into that, so we'll talk. But yeah, we're gonna basically, leave the existing, we did a test, basically looks at a complete scan of that building. And make sure the insulation, there wasn't any leaks and it wasn't wet, so that came back with, that building said no leaks. Which is a good candidate just to go over top.
Gotcha.
So they're gonna cut away around the parapet wall, the existing membrane, drop it down onto the roof. And basically lay insulation over that, like another 2.5 inches if I'm not mistaken. And then a new membrane over top of that, and then re-roof up the parapet wall.
Thank you.
So I think it was confusing is replacement almost implies you're getting rid of the.
Yeah, no,
That's what
no tear off, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, at the material recovery facility, we have a 103 kW system there. And it's up on the roof. And there's a steel roof over there, which is conducive to the solar without replacement. So we've gone through and looked at that, looked at the structural integrity of that it can support it. That's been done with all these buildings, it's not yet. And basically, that's the system over there.
Didn't you say there'd be a little extra in case we do expand it?
Room for ability, extra rooms.
So what it is I don't remember the exact percentage, but it is generating about 100%, 16% of those, something around there, slightly more than you have, so that you're currently using. So if you do expand, you will have additional energy savings. So the way it works now is if you generate, let's say you're paying 15 cents a kilowatt hour for electricity, and you can use that, then you save 15 cents because you don't need to buy it from consumers. But if you put it back onto the grid, consumer says, I'm not going to credit you back 15 because I can generate it for 10 and make your 10 sell to you for 15, just round figures. So they'll only credit you back 10. So our savings calculations right now assume no expansion and you only getting the credit back, the partial credit back from consumers. So any additional savings you would have from expanding, you would realize it's full 15 cents of savings credit. But since that timeline was unknown, we don't want to make it show it in a cash flow. You didn't know what year it is or how big it was.
On the solar applications, it's not using the energy direct, you're putting it into a battery system, or how does that work?
No battery system, it'll be direct wired into the building, direct use basically.
So the way it works in the legislation in Michigan is net metering. So if in the day you're making a lot more electricity than you're using, it's rolling the meter backwards. Then at night, when you're not making electricity, is going forward. So at the end of the year, you just pay a net for the electricity. Everything you put onto the grid minus what you took off the grid, and you pay that difference. And if you export more onto the grid, that's where you don't get the full credit. So their size typically to be about 95% of total energy use. So you net up against the the lower amount battery.
It looks like part of the application is on a north-facing roof, slide roof.
We use software basically to account for the shading factors, time of day that they're south facing, the direct sun, west, whatever it was. So they, I don't think they fit it all on the south roof, so some of it had to go on the north roof. But this the generation and the savings have all been accounted for with all the shading.
There, it is negligible, it's a very low pitch roof. So there was a thought about taking some of the panels, and put it more on the southern facing. A portion of that, but it was kind of negligible and you could kind of account for that based on the angle you do with the panels. But yeah, generally you want the things facing the side. Which I think you'll see in the next one.
Yeah, so over on Commission on Aging, up there wasn't a good spot to put it on the roof. The flat roof areas, there's rooftop units up there kind of scattered around. And then the other part of the roof was shingled, which that roof wasn't the end of its life yet, it's still got some years on it. And putting solars on a shingled roof isn't really a great idea to begin with. So there we're looking at covered parking. So see if up on the right-hand corner here, you can see kind of a side view of what that's going to look like. And angle to the south there. So, we'll have some, the solar will be there and you get the benefit of covered parking.
Because there, I know it's kind of covered up by that side view, but I spoke with the Commission on Aging Director, John Crawford, recently. Want to make sure that she's obviously interested in doing something out there. She's so thoughtful and she brought up some really good points. Do you see in the parking lot, those circular areas, the flower gardens, if you will, right? So the clientele at the Commission on Aging frequently was driving into said flower garden. So we had to put curbs up around those. Jen was honestly kind of concerned about putting a structure in the middle of parking. Because of the clientele, and they'll run into it, they'll back into it, they'll sideswipe it. We'll all get there. We'll all do the same thing, right? No harm, no foul. But so we're kind of thinking the employee parking is up there in that north east corner, if you will. It's covered up a little bit by your side view. Is it feasible to do covered parking in the employee parking rather than? I don't know. I realize you right-sized it, how it needs to be, but I just need to bring that concern forward. I think it's valid.
I have a couple of thoughts on that. One is, obviously this is going to generate electricity and save money, but then the other is providing benefits for the same people that might hit the thing. So that can be addressed with bollards at the poles. I don't know how many of the poles are, but if you put bollards on either side of those, that could potentially minimize any damage.
Yeah.
But the big yellow poles that they put in gas stations and press gas pumps. Those are pretty cheap. You just put a cardboard tube in the ground and fill it concrete.
You don't know
It's a
how
little
many
more
support
involved.
posts there are on this thing?
We could find out. I don't know off the top of my head, but and it's important to note too, the support posts are in the center.
So I'm thinking about snow plowing.
Oh, the what?
And what is that gonna look like, especially around bollards? It just, all seasons, right? We need to think about that.
Well, one of the questions we had is like a 250 or whatever the plow can get under there, but if you use front end loaders for that, then
Normally, plows out there are trucks. Hate to limit ourselves to that, but it has always been plow trucks, so
Isn't a pickup truck.
pickup.
and well, yeah, bollards might.
Bollards are tough to
Yeah, no,
follow.
we do that around EV charging stations.
It was also the idea that, you're not gonna get some snow under that, but you're not gonna get as much as you would. So you might, maybe,
Blows.
yes, it blows and drifts and all, you get drifts.
And maybe we could get some feedback on maybe just beefing up the structures to be able to take it back like a bollard. I don't.
The reason we're kind of hemming and hawing here is because that little
It's a
lot,
perfect placement.
that lot up there is
Not facing
smaller.
south,
And it's not completely south. There's some shading with the building on the west side. So I guess that's why we're.
Oh, yeah, the design checks a lot of boxes. I just need to bring forward that
So
concern, the
this-
legitimate.
The support posts, like this diagram shows, are only in the center of that thing.
Correct.
So it's completely
Yeah,
free of any,
yeah,
so it's not like people would be pulling in between posts.
right, when they make their turn, there's nothing there, they're gonna, cornering, it's all where they're gonna pull, they're gonna pull up to it,
Up to it.
or they're gonna back up to it, or whatever.
Well, maybe that's less concerning.
He said, you get those concrete posts on each side, protecting each support post. To me, that would be.
Yeah, I think we're gonna need to see a little more detail. on
See, they
that.
don't know
I don't
how,
know if they could set the post in a big concrete, I've seen that before too.
Or an island. So they can make it a island to where you could drive into.
Yeah, just make set the thing in a bollard that surrounds it. I don't know if that creates more issues. Again, that's just not an engineer talking. So I don't- Just kind of going by what I've seen. That might be a terrible idea for the record. It's like
Right.
something that we could look.
Awesome, thank you. I felt needed to bring that forward. She couldn't be here tonight. It's her son's first high school football game ever.
I have a different concern with solar out of the Commission on Aging, and that is if you go to the west, it's a huge ag field. Prevailing wind, farm operations, you're gonna have dust, you're gonna have crop residue when they're harvesting. Is that gonna compromise seriously? That's just got right here.
It's always our fault. I have a note that says the angler effect. You know how much property taxes we pay?
Really distressing.
So, is that your part?
No,
No, not over there.
Uh,
4 or 5
The
miles.
perception is that it's his farm.
I'll get blamed anyways, but that's besides.
Commissioner Zelinski, we did take that concern to the engineer, so I could actually provide engineer feedback this time. So, one of the thoughts was is that, a lot of times it's winter, so the dust isn't really an issue. A lot of times there would be crops there, so it really just kind of be, a month or two of plowing and maybe in the spring and the fall for harvesting. Also, it'd really only be an issue until the next rain. So, and also that, the energy, projections have accounted for the normal amount of dust accumulation that we think would be consistent with, even some additional dust from farming operations.
Yeah.
So,
Size of that field, it's only half the planning, and probably half the year harvesting equipment, so. They really won't be out there that much for disturbing that, so.
So what you're trying to say is the angler effect will be minimal? Is that what you're trying to say?
They're rare, it's Michigan, so the weather's different every time, but majority of the time will not have. The effect, the crops that are planted there, so.
Thanks.
So the short answer is that our energy savings calculations account for dust. Enough that it wouldn't be considered.
and then, you can see here, this one's got a little bit more bullets, because it is not on a roof. So there's, you accounted for a gutter system, the downspouts to be installed, so you're not getting the runoff off the panels there. And we've done, a lot of surveying and geotechnical analysis around and all that. To make sure that everything
Will be done.
will be done.
Yeah, our geotechnical investigation was looking at the, rather than going out there and drilling everything up, we have, Steve was able to find the drawings for the building to see the soil conditions and the footings, so the design is based on that, but we will do, the use of radiography, just to make sure there's no pipes or anything under there. The geotechnical repair, so the foundations and footings are.
And then we did talk last time about the pavilion you guys are putting in our wire run here, so hopefully, I know that'll be springtime-ish. So Sarah will handle the coordination with that, as far as, making sure we're coordinating when that's happening and when we're doing our stuff.
These are a friend of the gazebo that's going out there.
Yeah.
Because this might be being done.
Gazebo pavilion, I'm sorry.
Pavilion.
Spring. Not to spring now.
Sarah will handle it. That'll be on Sarah's plate. So make sure we'll integrate properly there. Roof of the trial court, we talked about solar there, so the roof goes along with it. So as I said, it's getting a 2.5 additional R30 or the insulation over the top of what you have now. We're doing R30, which is well above the code. We get all the flashings, rooftops, drains, roof edges, all that stuff.
I think the flagpole down while we're up there.
That's what that is.
Another thing to point out too is some of the IT stuff that's up there will have to be coordinated to be removed by people.
Doing security cameras, Michelle has conduit running along the roof. That can push the light bulb, should be on the parapet wall, not on the roof, passing to it. We'll do that with this meeting.
And then 30-year membrane warranty on the new. Okay. PSA for controls. What we looked at here is, once we get everything installed, having a PSA to service that. I know John can speak a little bit more about that.
But it's basically just having a control specialist come out once a month for 12 months, 8 hours, just to spend time with Steve and his people to troubleshoot any issues, tweak any changes. A lot of times people use that as okay, if something's not high priority over the month between visits, to keep a running list of things, additional training, just to make sure everything's running well when that person comes in, and they can answer any questions, provide the additional training, maybe make some tweaks, say, hey, we'd like this to operate like this, or I'd rather see the screen look like this, and make those changes. And that's just to kind of run things, for the first, I think 4 years, that's what they've shown in the cash flow, just to make sure that everything is up and running and people have everything they need to be able to run all those fancy stuff.
Okay, M&V. We'll talk a bit about that. So we have the boilers improvements, which fall under non-measured savings. The chillers, which is
Might want to back up a little bit. So measurement and verification, there's an international measurement and verification protocol. It's a international standard for measuring and verify. And they say, okay, to measure and verify savings, it falls within 5 categories: A, B, C, D, and non-measured. So that's when he talks about whether things are A or B, that's what it falls into. C and D are you almost never use there if you're building a whole new building and you don't have a baseline of before and after and how it changed in this computer simulation. So those typically wouldn't apply. So it's really just whether it's A, B, or non-measured. Non-measured is pretty self-explanatory. We replace a piece of equipment and it's going to save $200. You don't want to pay to measure the gas in and the combustion efficient in that. Maybe that costs $200. All your savings are to measure and verify. So we put together a plan that's reflected in the contract that says, okay, we'll take a statistical sample of the lighting, say before and after, and that would fall within option A. Option B for the solar generation is described there and how they're going to look at the generation, the efficiency of those panels and calculate those savings. So this is just kind of a summary of each of those improvements and what the plan is for verifying to you that you did get the savings that we are guaranteed.
Yeah, I'm not going to read through these in detail, but one thing to add to that, when we went around here a couple months ago, was we put little data loggers on all the air handlers in this building, on rooftops over there, to track what the runtime was. Put data temperature loggers in the building, scattered throughout the buildings to figure out what your temperatures were and what they did at night for night setbacks. So that was kind of our pre-measurements. Was a lot of that stuff we've done, which are described here. A lot of that will be done in the future, as well as we'll use the medicine system to train run times and all that stuff. So I guess stop me if you want to talk about the city in more detail, but kind of keep moving here.
I know that was a question we had the other day. We weren't really sure about what was the difference between measured and non-measured in the cash flow we were looking at, so.
Right, so yeah, the non-measured are essentially not guaranteed. So it says, okay, here's the calculations, we agree with these calculations. We don't want to spend the money and have that portion guaranteed. So if you look at the cash flow, it's like 90% of the savings are guaranteed.
Yes,
And the smaller items where the money to verify that would potentially exceed the savings from that. You know, even if we miss the number by a few percent, probably still better off not measuring.
penny wise and pound foolish. Kind of.
Yeah, you're spending all the savings to verify that you make the savings, so. And I think we're conservative on this. Vic and our team of dozen people that look at all the energy savings don't say that, but it's not my money that we pay if we don't get it, because we write a check for the difference. We say you're gonna save $1,000,000 and we save 70. Pay another 7,000, so it's our conservative system.
Okay, and then some of the HVAC improvements, the air handler refurbishments, that kind of thing would fall under non-measured. Lighting would fall under measure. We already took pre-measurements. For that, you know, what that consists of is going in this room and we count number of lights are on, take a light switch off, measure, take a meter, measure it, you know, divide by the number of lamps, basically. We did that throughout most of the buildings, and we'll do that once everything's installed post, and we'll compare the two measurements to verify the savings. Building envelope, door sweeps and seals, it's very hard to get an accurate measurement on that. We did get some infrared camera shots and we'll do some posts as well. But you know, those are small enough savings where they're non-measured as well. Solar will be option B, which is continuous measurement. So that those were a large amount of our savings was from solar. So that justified that going under option B.
I could probably talk to some days.
Even the hot seat there.
Alright. So the operational cost savings, so one of the savings from lighting in addition to using less energy is they last a lot longer. So there's industry standard calculations, and this described in the contract describes it too, what our projections are for operational savings. So saying, you know, changing out lights every 10 years rather than, you know, 2 or 3 for you know, like T8 or whatever they're replacing. So that calculation came to 1,036 a year. And that's annualized because it might be 10,000 in year 10, you know, when they all, you know, they're gonna kind of start counting depending on burn hours, you know, in years 5 to 15. So it's not going to be a steady amount. So that's annualized at about $1,000 a year. Shown in the cash flow in year 1 is 1,036. So it's operational savings for lighting. Now, the other side of it is a little trickier, is operational cost savings from mechanical work. So we looked at 30 months worth of accounts payable for building maintenance line items. It was 393. Not everything there is going to be HVAC related. There's carpeting issues. There's some that's just, hey, we spent $600 at Lowe's and we don't know what it is. So we highlighted everything that is very obviously HVAC, and then just took a percentage of that, and it was 5,765. Some of the items like filters and belts probably are still needed. They might be more or less. Other items like the one highlighted red there when we were talking about the R22 refrigerant, you know, $1,300 to recharge that, or, you know, maintenance fees or maintenance emergency costs when you need to have, you know, somebody local come out because the air handling unit's failing at the child court, or the boiler's failing. That could add up to $5,000 a year pretty quick. That's, you know, a couple of service calls for some of that failing. So that falls within kind of just a number that you accept in your cash flow as a potential savings that we can't really guarantee. But something we just try to capture for your benefit to help you, you know, kind of analyze how you're going to pay for the project. So the project payment comes from essentially all the savings streams we talked about, from energy, operational savings, and then capital savings, which we talk about next. So capital cost avoidance and is items that you would have spent anyway. We have a boiler that's failing. We would have spent, say, $50,000 to replace the boiler. Because it's in this project, we don't need that line item in a budget anymore. So it's the same as, okay, we have a line item of $1 million a year to consumers. Now it's only 900,000 a year. We don't have that line item in our budget. So that's what the capital cost avoidance is. It's avoided because it's included in this project, and no longer in the budget. You are technically still paying. So it's different from like the solar, because you wouldn't have needed to buy solar, or if you install something that you wouldn't have needed to operate, there's no capital cost avoidance for that. So this is capturing items like a roof. You would needed to replace the roof of the trial court at some point in the next 20 years. So you would have spent the way that shows there $225,000 on a roof in there at the trial court. So say, okay, if at some point we were going to replace the roof and spend $225,000 because it was addressed by this project, that's the only needed. So that this spreadsheet shows the 3 items that were addressed, as well as a couple items that aren't currently in a capital improvement plan that we've allocated some figures for. The rooftop units were in there, the 3 high efficiency boilers at the trial court, the rooftop units at the trial court, and the roof at the trial court. So that comes up to $3.4 million worth of equipment that would be replaced, and the roof that would be replaced in the next 20 years. The thing is, if you don't have $3.4 million worth of equipment, you'd have to set back money, maybe 150, 200,000 a year, and build up to say replace a $500,000 rooftop unit. And then over time, the cost of those go up. So it kind of escalates. The longer you wait to adjust these things, the more, they can cost. So that's also reflected in the cash flow. So that's the capital cost of avoidance. Energy savings total just under $3 million over the course of 20 years. And then in this cash flow, if you look at the top of here, the total project cost is just over $9 million. A portion of that is financed either through a tax exempt lease purchase or a bond, and then payments are made against that with the various saving streams. So this was set so that the capital contribution is the combination of ARPA figures and capital that the county put to the project, made it be a positive cash flow. So that's why there's approximately $600 left over. It's just the way it works based on the financing rate and with that amount of money put into it. So going item by item, the utility savings here in the first line, these are measured, guaranteed utility savings. Then the next box, there's 6 columns. These are non-measured savings. So those are the utility savings that aren't part of the measure and verified. They are very reliable savings. There's calculations to support those. They're just not measured and guaranteed. The operational savings that we discussed from lighting, the accounts payable analysis, rebates, which is from the utility company, which are primarily around lighting and higher efficiency equipment. And then that capital cost avoidance figure, which is that $3.6 million first year and then escalated. And then there's the Inflation Reduction Act. So the Inflation Reduction Act is part of the legislation passed in August of 2022. It has an allowance for funding from the federal government for projects that reduce environmental impact, primarily solar, as well as other things like geotechnical, geothermal loops, take heat out of the ground rather than burning carbon. So the credit for that is applied based on the cost of the solar equipment there. So that total, that second year savings is significantly larger because you get that one time lump sum payment. The next line item is a total of the savings, and then there was the cost to measure and verify. That was what we discussed to prove out those savings, and then the control subscription and the controls service agreement with the total services. So the way this calculates out is your loan payment is essentially to make your cash flow even. Your loan payment is equivalent to your total savings minus your total services. So it works out to be, cash flow neutral with those capital allocations. And we could do a whole hour workshop on financing and we have Nicole and Melissa do that with our kind of controls guru, and he's a little bit long-winded, so it's an hour meeting. That probably could have been a half hour.
Good
Um,
education.
And I know you're working with your financial advisors not to do whatever makes some sense. And this is just shown for information purposes. This isn't us financing and this is. Hey, we think you could get a rate of 4.51 that was based on a solicitation that went out. And that was the currently local.
We are meeting with financial advisor and bond counsel Friday morning. Just to talk about what our options are. These interest rates came back admittedly a little higher than we had hoped from that solicitation. But the bond counsel and financial advisors say that's not uncommon with the tax exempt lease purchase because it is a special kind of financing. But we want to see what other options might be out there. I was surprised and disappointed to not see Isabella Bank respond. So maybe just a conversation with Jerome about, why didn't you, would you, are you interested? It can go a long way, right? We're not ready to take the proposals that we received from the solicitation.
Isabella Bank is my mortgage holder too. 5 different banks and they were the last.
They really helped us on the bond anticipation note. I think they gave us a rate of 0.99. 0.99 was our interest rate. Of course, that was a couple years back, but.
Yeah, I think it's changed a little bit.
Well, it changed a little bit, but they're usually fairly aggressive, so maybe that tells me things are changing a lot.
Well, yeah, we obviously the lower the rate you have, the more the savings go to. Being able to get more equipment or even having a positive flat cash flow or being able to put less capital into the projects.
John, what does year 21 look like for us?
So we project out 21, year 21, nothing should change, assuming the equipment doesn't just immediately fail year 21. I mean, there's accounting, books that say life of equipment and, the average life of the equipment, we don't want your payment to be more than 20. So we look at, okay, this, roof is 30, this is 20. So the average life of equipment is at 20, so we project 20. There's people installed solar panels in the 80s, they're still generating electricity from their panels. So it's
Just like chillers, people sell chillers from the 70s right now.
right.
Yeah.
How long do the solar panels estimate roughly?
So their
Average,
warranty
they
is
last?
20 years. And it really, so happens whether it's about 25, 30, 40. That's why we only bank, in the show cash flow. So anything after that would be, just entirely savings. Another thing to keep in mind too is that you don't make any payments until the construction's done. So all the costs incurred to date spread about roll into the project. The plan right now is if you get a project and rate and everything sounds acceptable to you and you do approve the project in the your board meeting in about a month from today. They said it would be a 16-month project, which would have it finishing in January 30 of 2025. So the year 1 is really February 1, 2025. So you'll have some level of savings during that 16 months too. We'll have, the lighting or some of the things. The bigger items like the rooftop units that are 40 weeks, and the solar, that would be what's kind of pushing the schedule, further back. And that's why year 2 is a little bit conservative for ITC credit, because they haven't really said exactly the timing on when it'll go, will it be the financial year. So that's essentially shown in what would be 2026. But yeah, there'll be significant savings in excess of the year 20. Yes, and it's like, all right, it's the 20th year, rip out all the solar. It's still gonna. Just you won't need the savings you have to make it a positive, to make the payment. The loan payment shown in the second to last column there. You completely pay the loan. Then if the savings shown for $600,000 that year, would be even more than that the following years entirely. Were there any questions on this?
I have a question from the floor. Kind of administrator. I know we're looking at a 10-year budget forecast that looks pretty dire down 2 or 3 years in the future. And the question I have is, you know that we're gonna have some savings that we can divert, make these payments. But the capital avoidance, that may or may not be on an annual basis, so we may have to go into our fund balance to pay this home payment off. I know we're looking at having to go for at least a 2 mil request to the voters to just keep services as they are. And I know you've talked to a Commission on Aging, without maybe we can get some money from Commission on Aging to help too. They just asked for a increase in their millage rate because they were deficit spending. So I don't know how much they can contribute towards this project for that portion that they would benefit from. But looking down the road, I want to make sure whatever we do is something that's financially feasible that 20 years. Yeah, 20 years.
I couldn't agree with you more. I know one of the things that we need to do on the financing side, because Commission on Aging is not general fund, because MRF is not general fund, we need to separate those costs out. We need to understand, because it'll be general fund making the payment. Commission on Aging, you know, if it makes sense out there and it makes sense at MRF, then there are some monies I think that they could invest in this, because they'll be getting those savings back. It makes sense, I think, for them to invest in.
So I think what you're getting at is something that we could probably get to you in the next week. It's just, you know, how the various scope breaks out per fund. And I believe it's just the Commission on Aging, the MRF, and then is everything else general fund? Is there a separate fund for 911?
911 has its own fund as well. And we really need to see how those come together to know the impact on general fund. And I think with this, with the cost analysis, the cash flow, the capital avoidance is definitely the one I have the hardest time with, right? Because right now we're budgeting to pay utilities and we'll have savings. So we just keep budgeting what we're budgeting. We can use those savings to help us pay. Yep. Capital avoidance is a little different, right? Yes, the capital improvement plan over the years shows we gotta replace all those things. We gotta pay for all those things in the next 20 years, probably. So it's hard because that's not savings that we can use to make a payment. It's future costs that we're going to have to pay that we're not going to pay because we're rolling it into this project. It's a harder concept. It's not cash on the table, right? But it's like we've been lucky. We made this roof last 50 years. That's fantastic. This list says we would do all these things over the next 20 years. Would we? Probably, based on end of life analysis of some of these things, but that's hard. It's money we will probably spend on capital at some point in the next 20 years. But
it may not be a smooth
It won't look like.
process like this. It will be good years where we get the Band-Aids out.
yeah.
And that's what we've seen a lot of places where they'll say, okay, I've got a lot of roofs. I remember another project where a city was spending $100,000 a year patching the roof because they didn't have $500,000 to replace a roof. So over the next 10 years, over the next 10 years, they would have spent $500,000 and still had a patched up old roof. Whereas if you say, okay, you can replace this roof now and just pay $50,000 a year, or your overall costs are less because they need to patch it for $500,000 and then replace it for $500,000 in a several roofs across.
And I assume there's an escalator on that because we're not gonna, 20 years from now, we're not gonna replace it at today's cost.
No, yeah, and
So
that's
put an
where the
escalator on that, which
And other times, the fund pays their portion of it or realize their savings of it, so, you know, we could break the 9 million out into, okay, that's this much in the general fund buildings, the 9 to the MERV,
That's what
and
we
then,
really
it
need
goes-
to
and then
see.
say, okay, the loan payment, commission on aging of this $9 million project, 2 million of the scope is for your benefit. You pay 2/9 of the loan payment, and it comes from the savings, because a significant portion of the savings are also from the solar generated by there. So that's probably analysis that would help you to say, okay, we don't have to pay from the solar generated fund.
And we can't, to your point, Vice Chairman. We can't. We. It's hard to, as you said, the forecast shows we're skinny enough, general fund cannot make this payment for the next 20 years, as we sit today. So we do have to reduce the amount that general fund will pay for. This is one way to do it. 911 gets their piece, commission, and then it's a decision of them, right? Does COA want to go forward with this? We can do some analysis on that. Can the MERF go forward with this? You know, with how they are right now in their current situation. But as a whole, you know, general fund can't.
Can I take a tangent into a specific question here? So someone can help me. So we got measurement and verify fees for the first 5 years here, and then control subscriptions and PSA here, which $70,000 a year each for both of those together. And then in the document on page 46, it's M&V services, numbers are different. For year 1 through 4, we got 43,000 to 47,000.
Yeah. So the way that the contract works, the way this is shown is different from the way the contract works. The contract shows measurement and verify, and the subscription fees as one contract, and the PSA is a separate one. So the fees you're looking at are the measurement, verify, and the control subscription. And then the PSA is shown as no other. So the measure, verify, controls, and PSA should still add up to the 67. They're just in this document shown in, you know, measure, verify.
Attachment 4 to find with the
PSA.
Yeah, that was why I wanted to spend some time to kind of go through the layout of the contract. Because there's a there's a contract, there's 4 schedules and 3 attachments, so it kind of gets a little confusing. What's an attachment? What's a schedule? What's so it might help to do that now.
Actually, before we go there, I do have a couple questions I'd like to ask.
Sure.
Victor, you can tell me a little bit more about this TPO for the roof. Yep. Tell me about
What was the acronym?
TPO,
CPO?
thermoplastic. I just know it's moving.
Sarah might have a little bit more on that.
Manufacturer,
It's similar to a PVC roof, but it's a different type of material.
I know what it is. I'm just asking who's the manufacturer, and I noticed here you said 80 mil roof, 2.5 inches thick. You know, 80 mil is way more than that.
2.5 is the installation.
It's
The mill is
2.5
is just-
insulation, the 80 mil is, so 80 mil, 3.15 inches is the thickness of an 80 mil TPO.
So I believe is it 0.8?
.8.
So a standard roof, usually you're gonna see about 0.3.
Oh, so you say it's not 80 mil, this is 0.80 mil.
I believe it's
thickness roof.
0.8 mil. So it is thicker than a normal membrane roof. And that's why they have a warranty for 30 years on that roof. It is thicker and it's more durable. So typically on installations with solar panels above it, you know, that's gonna give you 30 years underneath those solar panels.
Sure. We can-
Who's the manufacturer of that?
We do have the cut sheets for that. There are a couple different manufacturers that they do essentially for all the volatility with the lead times on equipment. That's why we say it could be different similar brands, but I don't recall offhand what.
VersaWeld is the basis of design, and following up to our previous conversations, you wanted the data sheets. I've been trying to get into large files. I have a USB drive with the cut sheets that are shown on here. The basis is designed for the chillers, the boilers, the VAV boxes. You know, there's a lot of information on the stuff that I could send to the cut sheets are just kind of data descriptions and literature on it. The roof membrane looks like it's a Paris.
It's the other tabs that open to go back to the.
Yeah,
There's the chops.
So it's gonna say 80 mils 2.03 mm. There.
yeah, so it's 2 inches of insulation with a 2 millimeter thick membrane over it. Is that correct?
The membrane's a couple millimeters.
VersaWeld is one of the companies you use. I used to have regard, so.
Do you remember the other one? There was 2 that was.
I want to say it's John. I want to say John Mills, but I think I'm just thinking Mills because it's the name John.
I wasn't named after a person, that
Yeah.
So if we get that information, that'd be great. Sure. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll get all these cut sheets too. I'll leave actually put everything that is on this folder here, the contract and the presentation, flash drive that I'll leave.
I think I want to like to ask something on behalf of all of us commissioners. And I've asked this before, 3 times now, but I really like to see this, each page at the top right-hand corner, how much each one of these costs. So we can actually see, okay, the mechanical for the administration chiller replacement, for the air handler. Every single page should have a total dollar amount cost associated with it. We can actually see, right now it's just one big number. It's all I see. And I see another big number. Well, this is the capital improvement, we're gonna say. The big number. No, I need to see, and I've asked you before about being specific. So I can see that. I know that would help me. I don't know what you've done, but it would be nice to have dollar amounts associated with each one of these improvements.
Absolutely, yep. We'll get that too.
Yeah.
I bet we'll have to do that to figure out what piece is COA, what piece is
Right,
general.
right.
what
And
piece
yeah,
we
that's
have to
actually right. And that's exactly what I was thinking. So we broke down per facility measure per improvement measure per building per fund, essentially,
Yeah.
with the cost and the savings associated with that too. I think Commissioner Sweeney, you wanted to review the contract, or I don't know.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Or were you, I'm
That's their
sorry,
PSA. I guess we're going to go next. right?
Oh, if you're gonna go over the contracts that in general, that's fine.
It'll be included in there.
so the first few pages here, so. I'm just having a mouse, I don't. Touch pad. Yeah.
No mouse?
It's. Fancy, what's that? So the attachments are the base agreement are the first 8 to 10 pages. That's what we're looking at now. So I'm kind of just scroll through that. It's basically just terms and conditions and a signature that goes to page 8 at least. So then going back to the kind of table of contents. The schedule 1 is the scope of work. Schedule 2 is the assured performance guarantee. So that's what all the calculations in savings figures. Schedule 3 is customer responsibilities. Schedule 4 is price and payment terms, and then there's the standard contracting forms that would be used throughout the project, the notice to proceed, a change order form, and again, there's no change orders on this project or any of the scope that we're providing. That would be if you want to request additional. documents. This is a guaranteed price. The guaranteed savings. And then there is a certificate of final completion for the actual project. And then attachment 5 is the PSA. So the PSA is where it has a controls only portion of that. The schedule 4 has the M&B combined with these subscription costs, whereas the cash flow has the PSA combined with the subscription costs.
Yeah.
We can,
And also, moving forward, if we were to get a subscription like Open Group normally for a department, like, you know, say the clerk gets a subscription for some computer service or service. That's a whole other, that's a presentation that like what services are we receiving? What's the, you know, we don't have a number for the service subscription, which is, I guess, is combined with the MV services
you're
here.
correct, yeah.
So,
So
yeah,
you'd be able to decipher that, but it's not very clear.
right.
Yeah, break it out. Yeah, you have to take what's in the contract and then subtract the PSA cost or the M&B cost from cash flow. Yeah,
Right,
that's
right. Right. Yeah, so I guess right now the subscription fee for the Open Blue is vague, I guess. Like,
It's not most.
Yeah. Also, I guess I would say on the preventive maintenance service agreement, and just walking through that at attachment 5.
That one is called out.
And the first 4 years of each are rolled into the project costs.
It's shown in the cash flow, so that it's, but it's not shown in the base, it's 9 million.
Okay, that,
So that's what, going back to the cash flow, that's what this figure is. So the measure and verify the controls in the PSA and the subscription. So it's like 23,000 for the controls PSA, 22, 23, and then like 10,000 for the subscription. Ballpark figures.
Yeah, I think I saw 10,000 somewhere in here. Now that you mentioned it.
I'm not sure it does call it out because the way it works is it's assigned a contract for the construction and then it's a separate contract for its services. And that's kind of why it's broken out here. And it probably should have been another column. It should have been measure and verify, control, subscription, PSA. Because there's still all options. You don't have to
Right,
take any
right.
do the project. But yeah, we'll do a better job of building it.
You know, on page 23, schedule 2, this total project benefits. Looks very similar to the what we were just looking at, outlined in blue.
Yes, so that should align with that cash flow. So this is just the utility cost of values, the non-measured, so that's the guaranteed under MV, the operations maintenance costs, future capital avoidance, and the ITC. So it's there with the summary for the first 4 years.
Right, but that's different than the blue. I got 9.7. And in here, it's saying 4.25% on page 2. But we've got 4.51, which I'm glad we worked. Oh, no, that's a 4.25 escalation. Never mind. I'm not sure what the rate of financing is in there. Do you know what makes up that?
There's no financing costs associated with that. That's not showing any financing costs. There's not a payment shown in that. That's just a summary of the benefit side.
Oh, so there's not, okay, so that should not equal to 1.
Correct, yeah, this doesn't adjust it, because the the loan payment is kind of a separate contract. I mean, we can do this. Some people just say, I want to sign one contract, and then we basically just go up and get a loan from the bank. From your perspective, you're signing one contract, but it still works the same. You know, we don't, you know, we're not in the business of being a bank or trying to make money
Mhm.
financing.
Yeah,
So we want you to get the lowest rates you can to make the project as attractive as possible.
Okay, thank you.
So schedule two just kind of summarizes all the calculations. You know, where the savings comes from. It does refer to operational benefits and capital savings as appendix C. So then if you click over to appendix C, this is the entire 30 months of, well, the first page is the capital plan with that figure that's shown as year one. And then the next several pages are the 30 years worth of accounts payable, 30 months worth of accounts payable, and where the summary came and kind of where that number was based on. And then another document is the line by line. So this is every building, every light you have, and what we are or not doing with it, because a lot of them have been converted to. And this is, you know, I guess a few hundred pages long. So that's appendix A. B goes in a little bit of detail about the controls and how sorry, we got a new program with different PDF reader I'm still getting used to. So this kind of gives you a little bit of detail on you know, how these equipment communicate to each other. These are more engineering drawings, so they don't mean a lot to me, but if you have questions on them, I'd be happy to get them to the engineers that can answer them. So back to the performances. So that's where the within the performance contract document, the schedules 1 through 4 are in there. And so are the attachments and the appendixes are 3 separate comments. Which I suppose we could have called. We try not to let documents get really big because a lot of times appendices are photos and then they get really big and they can have trouble mailing the contracts. So we're just they break in a couple of emails. So schedule 1 through 20 or attachments 1 through 20. And so if there's some kind of standardization you want to do with that. Not tied to any particular naming nomenclature.
So is it the loan payments that are here? This is calculated as a break even for us through was this the TELP that we were looking at? So if-
They're using the interest rate from the solicitation.
So if we, oh, okay. So no matter what, this loan payment is whatever we decide, it's going to be this amount. I guess what I'm trying to, if we go to Isabella Bank and say, will you loan us that money? Are they gonna say a 20-year loan at 4.25% is X amount? We don't care what your savings are. We don't care what to break it. You know how this makes it look cut and dry, left and right, savings, no savings. Am I thinking, could they say,
I think that's what financial advisor was gonna tell us on Friday as an option, right?
so I guess it could be better than this, it could be look worse than this,
Yep, exactly.
right? Okay.
Yeah, so at 4.51, which was the rate, that was the lowest rate back on
Lowest
the
rate.
response. The payments were set to equal the savings stream and then the capital contribution was set so that the cash flow positively. If you got a rate of 4.25% and these loan payments stayed the same, then you would have a balance each year shown. Or you would have to, or you could say, okay, we don't need to contribute as much. So that's part of the discussion that you would have with whoever lending entity is, whether it's the bank or bond or however you go about that. But a lot of times you could also do fixed payment and say, okay, we want to just pay You know, rather than 288,000 in year one, 233, 244, and then escalate it over time, you could say, we just want to have a number in our budget of 350,000 a year and do that for 20 years. You could, that could potentially avoid more interest because you're paying more upfront. So if you say, okay, and a lot of times communities will look at, I'm paying on a bond payment, I'm paying $300,000 a year for a bond that expires in 3 years. So I want to maybe keep my payment really low because making that payment, then at 3 years, I want to jump up. So, you know, that's really just indicative on a payment. So, and that's where in the contract, we say, okay, here's your savings. And it's, you know, will help you, but it's really up to you and your financial advisors is, okay, what do we want to negotiate with our banks for the payments? Do we want more efficient with interest? Do we want it later so that maybe more cash flow frees up when another payment drops off? So that's where the bond council look at, okay, everything that we have paid over 20 years and where this could potentially fit in to avoid interest and also be a manageable thing. Just like I'm not an engineer, I'm not a financial advisor either, so that's a layperson's explanation of it. We'll probably do a lot better job.
So on the. Okay.
Go ahead, Commissioner, go first. Go ahead.
So some of this is brand new equipment that's coming in, some of it's gonna be rebuilt. Rebuild equipment. Looks at the housing, there's no extensive rust or things to be concerned about if we rebuild the components.
If there is rust, we'll cut it out and replace it. Like the air handlers we're talking about, so we'll pull out, that's one of the first things to look at, is look at the shell. If there's rust along the bottom or whatever, that'll be cut out, replaced, you know, we paint the whole.
As part of this cost or?
Yes.
And the reason you're not gonna put new in is because it's probably connected with a much larger system building.
Yeah, I mean, the whole building, you know, the engineering that was originally done with this building, size that unit, that ductwork and all that. If we went look at replacing that, not only we have to get the thing in there, you know, and assemble it and all that, it's more expensive. But also you're looking at potentially changing the design, which how would that equate with the ductwork and the piping? So, which gets more expensive. So rebuilding it really makes sense.
My understanding, so a project is that's pretty typical because it's just a big metal box. It's just paying a lot of money to demo that thing in and find a way to get it and build a big metal box. 95% of the metal is there and usable. And it's kind of similar with what they're doing at the chiller. Most likely they built the penthouse around the equipment in there. So
Right, yeah, the chiller was presently cut up and taken out in pieces.
so if you try to put a chiller back in there, we'd have to either get it in pieces and build it in there or take
Take the panels off. And
Yeah, it's all the size, I believe it came in.
take panels off. And
Yeah, part of that reason was, you know, the new chillers are bigger, so more efficient, so they wouldn't have fit it. That's why we had to go out and retrofit it. And it'll free up a lot of space.
sorry, I kind of sidetracked a little bit.
People who know about these things understand what you just said? Because
The rebuilding.
I would have to have him say it all again. I'm not my
Yeah,
forte.
yeah,
People who
pictures of this,
understand.
because you know, people think an air handling unit, but like some of these air handling units are as long as this table.
But in our case, in our air handling units, would you say it's best practice then to refurb rather than replace?
You can't really get an idea of the size of this thing because you just kind of get a picture of the.
There's a foot in the corner.
You
Yeah, and the only time you
gotta do something about the feet, Leonard.
Now, if you were telling me that you're, if we're gonna gut this building and tear the walls down and redo it and redo the ductwork and all that, it would make sense for a new product. Since we're trying to be as minimally invasive here as possible. You know, the rebuilding is really makes no sense.
Was that your question?
No, I'm completely different. This is more on some a little bit on the contract. It's just a little confused and a little bit on the pricing on this. You got your M and D services. First 4 years, at the end of 4 years, Johnson Controls agreed to extend the term. Pricing services will be determined at that time. Then we go to the attachment and for government, I'm not a big fan of automatic renewals. If it says the contract, is that for the M and B services, or is that for both of them? For the other one where you have automatic renewal in your terms and termination in there, so. I write all my automatic renewals for my leases, but if I find out that local government, sometimes they don't pay attention to them quite as well as they should, so sometimes bring in law. I'm just kind of curious.
Question is to can the contract be?
I'm just kind of curious because one says that we're gonna negotiate at the end of the term, this one says it's automatic. Renewal unless notified within, the same, it just, I'm confused a little bit.
Why are they different?
Is it a specific page you're referring to that?
Page 10, attachment 5, and on the terms and terminations, number 1.
Okay, yeah, that's just the controls PSA.
That's just that.
That's just a control PSA, yeah. So
Okay.
it's a little confusing. It says refer to page or schedule 4 for price and payment terms. So schedule 4 price and payment terms has the project, the construction.
I just love
The design, construction, setup, it's everything. And then it says M&B services, which is also the subscription fees.
Yeah.
And it says total per price for JCI's M&B and blue subscription services, and that's just kind of an internal issue of how, the branches contract for the services, our people provide those services. And then it says the preventive services, see attachment. It says 4, or should it say 5?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought that.
And then on attachment 5, yeah, that's just the PSA, and that can be auto or not.
I thought that's what it was. Can really determine if that was the case or not.
Yeah, I would understand holding out not to have auto renew because you'd want to probably force the board to pay. It's still providing the value that we perceived, or do we want to cancel? And they're actually all cancelable anytime too. So if you say,
I think we found 1 or 2 of them that were on for auto renew for quite a while since I've been on this board. And we had to take them off, so. Okay, thanks for the clarification. Just didn't make sense to me.
and you reminded me of a important point too. So a lot of times, you could say, all right, here's 20 years M&B, and then then a lot of the savings goes towards that. So we kind of look at 3 to 5 years, because that's usually when most customers want to cancel that, because I'm paying 30,000 a year. In the first year, you get a report. We said you're going to save 90,000 usually, saving 5-10% more than that. In 2-3 years, you get this report, and you get all the calculations. You go, okay, everything's running smoothly. I don't want to pay for that anymore. You could cancel that after the first year, second year, third year. So any of those subscription and services based contracts are cancelable.
I have one more note here.
I
Can't find my thing here, but it was something on 10% discount on street services during the length of the contract.
That is where the controls PSA, so we have, our label rate. So if you say, okay, we're gonna sign for 4 years, that 8 hours once a month, that's reflects 90% of what it would have been if you just called up and said, hey, we want you to come up for 8 hours. And then other thing I want to point out too is like what the controls, like they're all going to work. It's not like if you don't pay us to come out, we're like, yeah, the controls, some subscription based fees work like that. And some of the services that we offer are like that too. It's like your Zoom account, or if you have Microsoft Office at home, if you don't pay your $60 or whatever, that stuff. So your controls always work, and you get updates for those, kind of like that's, I guess, more similar to the Windows model. Hey, we support Windows, Microsoft says they're supporting Windows X or whatever they're on now for however long, things that supported, you're getting an automatic update. So the controls would work like that. Just
just like the ones from Trout Court, 23 years old, are still working. Still supported.
One caveat to that would be the open blue, that is, you know, a different business model, so that it have access to the subscription fee, which I think might have been poorly communicated in a previous meeting. It's like, well, it'll still work if we don't pay for it. All your building systems will, it's that open blue needs to maintain that, you know, approximately 10,000 a year in order to have access to those services.
If we decide to cancel those after 4 years. and we get
Or
to
earlier.
year- Or earlier. And get down to year 10 or 12 and we want to see, how are we doing? What does that look like? Still same savings? Are we is that like you can come out one time, or is it when we're done, we're done?
Actually, with the open blue, it's gonna calculate all that. It'll show you that, it just doesn't have, you know. Diary.
That happens to you.
So you'll have a good snapshot of what your savings are within that. The services have a guy going in and checking that on a regular basis. Because
It's shared.
yeah, my shared.
I just unshared them.
Yeah, my screen just, I don't know if the battery died or timed out.
I think you.
It's
Never
not-
got,
it's not-
never got around to flooding it in.
Oh,
I'm just checking mine.
We all thought we,
I'm still not there.
really,
Got a blank screen, but.
are you,
I might still be looking for my shared screen.
all you're gonna see is us anyway.
I can see you, I know I see him.
Yeah, I'm going.
You can see you.
I don't know.
You can see us so.
I never got around.
Now we-
Yeah.
I guess I didn't pay my monthly fee.
Yeah, I have never seen this, sir.
Well, mine's doing the same thing,
Huh, I
I
don't,
won't take it. I won't take it.
but we're being, you can see us, so.
yeah, we can see you, we just, I don't know what.
Can't look at you guys.
No, I know, I want to know how we're gonna pay for this. Because we can't count on the capital savings every year. And look for some input from you. I think once we get the information, as we break out the MRF and Commission on Aging, we can do some analysis. I still have some concerns about the solar at the Commission on Aging. And I don't know what impact that would be in terms of energy savings compared to the cost of the project, if that would lower the project. The MRF, I don't know, we're looking at, some new facility, perhaps, I'm not sure. We don't know what's gonna happen to that facility in the future,
Addition to it.
Now, so
maybe.
would that roof be stay?
Yeah, it would be the difference between that, what was it, 7,000 square foot, the 10,000 or 10,000 would be a steel building, or the other one would be a boot building. And that's why there's quite a bit of difference. What was it, $800,000 difference between the two buildings?
And if we keep the Commission on Aging in the project,
But the roof on
Oh, the
we need
refresh-
to
the current one,
ask
yes.
the director if she's gonna be supportive.
No, this is an
I
addition.
want to
Oh,
tick off a lot
This is
of
a separate
seniors in the
building.
county.
They're these-
They're the ones that are always out there to vote. And you hear them.
This would be in there.
She indicated she's very supportive of the project.
And our thoughts are they would be supportive of not having to scrape the snow off the vehicles.
Yeah, well, that might be why she. said-
Other than that, I can't see anything else that I would eliminate. I think all these things are down the road we have to deal with.
Regarding solar at the MRF, our understanding was, and we looked at a feasibility report, that any scenario would involve demoing or making any modifications. Otherwise, you don't want to put solar on there now just to have to take it all down and put it all back up. It wouldn't be the end of the world. A lot of the times it just kind of snap together and are weighted and attached, but that's why we, at the Commission on Aging, a roof that's 10 years old, if it were brand new, it might be okay to put it up there, but if you put it all up there now, it's due in 20 years and you need a new roof in 10, 15 years, you have to take all the input back up again. So the same as the MRF, our understanding is nothing's going to be changing on that roof, so it makes sense to put the solar.
Right. I'd just like to say on that, that some counties are really interested in our project and are coming to the meetings and kind of excited about it. So it's a little more certain at this point. What do you say, Fred?
Yeah, we had 3 counties, and the next meeting we'll probably have quite a few more. The thing about the feasibility study in the MERS facility, I think everybody agree on here, is it cannot continue
As if,
as it is, so we are gonna have to expand it if we want to keep it. We're just, there's no middle ground to it. We either expand it and modernize it, get more material in there, or else we have to.
But that expansion calls for leaving the existing.
Existing
building
building and adding
Correct.
10,000 square foot covered tipping floor, so.
Right.
So, yeah.
They also like to say, as far as policy goes, there's a lot of money available. And in cooperation between counties, there's financial incentives to work together and turn it into a regional thing. So as well as opportunities for private investment and all that. I'm just trying to indicate that it's not iffy as much as you might think. There's some really good reasons going forward to expand it, and there's some really good big benefits to doing it as well. And like he said, if we don't do, we have to do something right now.
If we
Because
get,
it can't continue the way we are.
we get the materials we need in that facility, and commodity prices don't go completely in the toilet. Payback could be as 5, maybe 6 years, which is pretty good investment. Especially we're looking at financing, so. But it's all if we get the material, that's. So, and that would be a big saving to our budget going forward. The feasibility study says there's potential for profit there, but I'm not even counting on that. So even if we did a, $1.2 million possibility, but that could change if there's more recyclable available. The market's like, we have a more steady market, we'll get a better price for it. Right now, we're not producing enough steady to do,
to entice a broker.
to get a good price, guaranteed price, so. That's where we're at, so.
It will be good to see that breakout of savings, because especially Commissioner Jelzinski for the MRF, to look and see how much savings at the MRF, and could that savings help sustain it a little more for a while, because we currently appropriate $350,000 up to $450,000 of general fund. So when we're looking at savings, I know Commission on Aging savings would be Commission on Aging savings. MRF kind of is general fund savings, because if we can get those savings there, we don't have to appropriate as much to them. Almost $500,000. So, but we do need that breakout to see, is the savings there?
I think that-
50,000, right, does it, we'd have to analyze that for sure.
I think the actual cost runs drawing us a little bit more than that, though.
What was that?
I think the actual cost that we're spending at the MRF, especially like this year, is gonna be a little higher than some of the costs that aren't figured into supporting that, so. Plus, the amount of money that's going in there from the 2% is.
Yes, the
is a
tribe has
lot.
been very gracious with,
So,
that's been these last few years, 5 years, that is really helping our
figure
recovery.
that end, and that could go to other 2%.
Right, I didn't think.
Yeah, so take that one out. So.
Yeah.
Are we gonna hear
All
from
that shoveling made us tired.
Commissioner Hutchinson.
Virtual stuff.
Are you saying 10?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
nothing.
They're looking to you, sir.
Yeah, we need to sit in this
I'm
meeting.
old, I'm not here.
Down.
Sorry.
You made it.
Moved down here a long time. Give
I'm
them
sorry,
a-
repeat that, please.
Oh, we brought you in this meeting at, sitting here, I would love to hear, your thoughts on the proposal, from,
As far as, I mean,
as far as your head of buildings. and-
okay, so as far as getting all this done, as a facilities director, I love it. I mean, why wouldn't I? I mean, there's a lot of things that need to be taken care of. You see it in my CAP, and I mean, even when I did that, I told you it wasn't all inclusive, just things that I could see along the way. There's still things popping up. So I mean, from that standpoint, I like that idea. Can we afford it? Can we afford it, what they're asking for it? I mean, there's a lot of variables there as far as what I'm concerned is about whether we should go forward with it or not. I mean, obviously my decision, but I like the idea of replacing this equipment. There is going to be huge energy savings.
So, I guess, what's your view on, the, measurement and, so those services, PSA and measurement and what was it, was the V? Verify. Um, so, I mean, if you look at just doing the first year and not 4 years, that saves $90,000, $100,000. Do we need measurement and verification out?
I would suggest we did at least for the first year, know where we're at. But as I said, we could cancel any time. We could go along after the second year and say, 2 years, everything's gone right where we thought it should be. Why do we need to continue? I mean, I would be in total agreement with that. But I do think we need to, at least in the first year, verify our savings that we're projecting. The support for the controls and all that stuff, I think that's gonna be big for me in my department. Of course, I've requested training for the 2 staff that I have on the maintenance staff. So if there is issues, having somebody that we can consult with, take care of that, I think that's a big plus for us.
Being able to control it from here,
Well, that would
kind
be.
of nice.
Mhm. Probably need a new
21st century
bonus about
stuff
that,
here.
I do hate to leave that IRA credit on the table too, so.
IRA credits, that is like solar rebate, is that
Yeah.
part of it?
Yeah, that's a direct payment from the treasury for, solar.
So, this is, I guess, more of the finance question. If we're not paying until February 2026, my residential understanding of loan agreements is you get one and they're good for X amount of time. Even our USDA rule, when we're coming up against deadline to make sure we started the project so that we could get that percent. So, I guess we need to figure out, or someone needs to inform me, how long is Isabella Bank guarantee rates?
So the solicitation that we did recently, one expired today. Yesterday, it's already expired, and another one that expires this Friday.
So does that mean that we take the loan early and pocket the money to general fund and pay in February so that we're not potentially hitting a 6% financing or
Well,
things go south?
I feel like, and again, we have to wait until Friday to see what the financial advisor is gonna tell us, but I feel like they're gonna say that we can get our money cheaper, not going through the TELP. But there's a time frame involved with that, right? I mean, you remember going out for the correctional facility bond, there's a notice of intent, there's a referendum period. It takes some time, but if that saves taxpayer dollars and hundreds of thousands of dollars of interest over 20 years, then that's prudently what we will do. I think we need to have a discussion of, and I know your desire to have the thing approved in September was because your pricing was based on bids that were good through September, basically. So I don't know what that looks like if it doesn't get approved end of September. You go, does it start over again? You guys go out, bid out for pricing and we replace the thing
I
again?
would
You
have
have to, because
reevaluate that.
your guarantee is based on your current, well, based on your current bids.
And that's where with that's help. And again, if you save money doing something else, but you could have a resolution that says, okay, here's this contract. And here, you know, here's a resolution to approve the contract with Johnson Controls. Here's a resolution to approve the loan with, you know, X Bank or whatever, and say, okay, this is the contract, this is how it's being paid for. And not have to take that flyer on, okay, if we get 4.51, we're gonna be good. If we get less, then we make money. If it's more, then we lose money. It's a little bit more of a no. But I mean, if Nicole said, if, you know, the financial advisor say, hey, they're gonna save hundreds of thousands of dollars. You know, going out in the fall, and we still potentially sign the contract. A lot of times they issue a bond, you need to have a contract in place, I believe, have bond persons. Something along those lines, or at least have plan what that bond's going to.
Oh, yeah, when the notice of intent has to say exactly what it's for.
And then how long, you know, the price could be good for, I don't know how long the process is to get a bond.
I think we will find those, you know, we'll find those answers out Friday, but I feel it is getting a notice of intent to the board that starts you publish that starts a 45-day referendum. As long as a certain percent of the electorate doesn't come forward to say you can't do this project, then it's a go. You can do it without going to the voters. That's at least a 2-month process.
So that means these costs that we have right now on the table will rise again. This project started. Well, don't quote me. Turn off the recording. No, I'm kidding. I don't know, around 7.5, 8 million, 8.3. I wasn't on it from the beginning. Now we're at 9. So what does that look like? It just keeps growing. So we wait. We're gonna look at the USDA. If we would have waited
One day,
cost would be have been 12 million. Or sorry, that time the percentage was 12 million.
yeah.
So that fear of waiting, but we need the time. We need more analysis. And the project has just been growing since the beginning. So
So I apologize, I don't have my hearing aids in, so I don't always get to the conversations, the background. But if we went with a 4.51 and we went through a process of getting a lower interest rate, would there be a way of just paying that off and then switching to the repayment on refinancing basically?
Wow, that's another great
I guess
question.
That's a Friday
Look and
question.
see if they had any kind of prepayment. on that,
Yeah.
Yeah, prepayment.
Yeah, it's what they early, sure.
Mhm.
You're gonna borrow us the money.
No.
Hello, Rich.
Yeah, you guys keep telling me. I don't know, I'm.
Did we
wait
take
for that to
care of
happen.
that?
Considering that most of these are energy saving, solar, big part of it. Could we look into alternative financing with like one of the closed loop,
I
like,
was thinking that as you were talking, honestly,
And
it's just, their whole thing is to increase the amount of recycling,
we're already,
recyclables into the
already
street.
talking to the groups already about finance.
On the MRF side, I think they would. They might do something on the MRF side. They wouldn't do anything for Commission on Aging. They wouldn't do anything for the county, I don't think. But specifically to improve that MRF, if it meant they were going to increase the amount of recyclables that they took in, which ultimately the whole project's gonna do.
Well,
We
they're
were
really
talking.
interested, they're already pretty interested in.
I don't know what you mean by closed. That's a company.
It's a loaning company that they closed loop is a group. It's usually they have like Walmart, Myers, And they pool their money for, mostly for environmental
Okay,
stuff, so
yeah,
they have
okay,
different divisions in there. Some of them are, some of them are just pure money making investors. Some of them are, low interest loans for projects they want to promote. And some of them are actual contributions, so depends on the project that they want to finance, but it's a lot of money, so.
And their whole mission is to divert stuff from landfills. They don't, that's their main goal. Making money is not their main goal.
Right.
They want more recyclables and manufacturing.
But like that glass screen thing, it shows the diversion that we are, this would accomplish. So I think, why not find out about it? So the carbon Jake would know more.
the other?
No, I can see, there's a lot of concern. We need immersion. Enough money to stick in it. That's it. You told me that we could get to where we could break even out there.
It's a service. And that is also a little off topic here. But I'm just saying, I'd rather hear your comments on this.
I think there's a lot of things that we've got to find. Yeah, I mean, there's so much information. We're trying to make a decision and we don't have all the facts.
I personally need the documentation, the information.
I don't actually think that this is enough information here. I'm not so worried about balancing out the savings at this aspect of the point. I'm more worried about making sure that at the end of the day, it's Isabella constituents' money that we got here, and that's $9 million. No matter how we pay for it or what tax credits we get, right? That helps, that reduces it, but I mean, here all I see is basically 9 million, and the only money that is laid out in the contract is the services. There's no breakdown of costs for the equipment installation, those types of things. That it's all a vague area.
I'll make sure you get something to be, to Nicole to be distributed.
Yeah,
That breaks down every line item.
that would be great.
Where all those costs.
That would help.
I think it was Commissioner Embry said that it's just one big number.
Yeah.
We need to see it broken down.
Agreed.
Yeah.
This is- I don't see this with numbers in the corner. You're gonna get pushback. Let me clear. This, so
You're gonna get that with numbers on it.
That's for things tonight.
You're gonna get that and more detail.
All right, you need great. That too.
Well,
I wrote down a note to have breakdown by all the scope by facility, as well as to put that on that presentation, a number in the corner of the presentation. You get the modify the contract to show M&V, TSA and subscription, not to lump those in the two. And then to look at the language around auto renewal on the PSA. Made a note about prepaying penalty, but I guess your advisors will look at that with their rate sheets. So the way that help work, they had a rate sheet, they say it expires Saturday, I believe, the lowest better. But then, so they say, okay, by Saturday, tell us you want to work with us, and then in about 3 weeks, they'll go through all the underwriting and everything, and then they'll provide you a rate lock through, say, the end of September. Then you can say, okay, if we approve this project, we know we're gonna have this rate, so you have a little bit of certainty, but if your financial advisors are certain that they're gonna be at the 4 or 5 1. Or whatever percent, and defer to them.
Well, and And then that's the tough thing too, right? Because if Friday, if they say, I don't see them screaming that right now, oh, take it, then, I mean, I have no authority. I have no authority to
Right.
take it from you at that. point. We're back out to solicitation. But I do feel like there are other options, and that's why the financial advisor and bond counsel want to meet, to go through what those options are.
Heard from the chairman, yeah.
Well, I concur with what everyone else has said. We need a lot more information. We need this broken down by each project. We need the cost broken down by cost center, general fund, or commission on aging. And then we need to know the financial piece of it that we won't know until Friday. So I think that's where we're at.
Thank you for patience with us.
Yes.
We're here for as long as you want us to be.
All right, appreciate that.
Thank you, commissioners, for the special meeting. I know it's extra. I have another meeting thrown in the mix, especially on your week off. A lot of you have been pretty busy today.
I'm glad we did this, though. I mean, this was way too much to try to cram into a meeting, a regular meeting. So, yeah.
Give it service.
Anything else?
They're long-winded.
Okay,
Get marching
going
orders.
once, going twice, we're gonna move on to general public comment. I think we still don't have any general public, do we?
That is correct.
Okay, announcements, Commissioners, any announcements? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support, moved and supported to adjourn, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
21, thanks, everyone.
Just for you.
Oh, thank you.
What you got yesterday was a piece of it.
I'll take it home.
This is everything that they sent.
Okay.
So we're on top of
Third
it.
meeting, I think, it makes a difference.
It's that blue read out for you. So, great.
Keep them out.